Well, welcome back to Grandma's Corner, where you've been watching all my videos and I've been enjoying making them. And today we are going to read a very special book called Rechenka's Eggs. Remember that video I did on Pysanky? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. It's about all these wonderfully decorated Pysanky eggs that I grew up making. And I showed you in the video the other day how to also make them. So this book I bought many years ago, and I was lucky enough to get it signed by the author, Patricia Polacco, because she happened to be at a school where I was teaching and she was selling them. So there's her signature. And it was given to my son Justin about 30 years ago. So I had to do a little math in my head. That's a long time that I've had this book. So here we go. I've got my audience here today. They're all excited about hearing my book, and I hope you are too. But I've got to get my little cheaters on because otherwise I'm not going to know what words I'm reading. So here we go. Rechenka's Eggs. Babushka lived alone in a dacha, a little house in the country, but she was known far and wide for the fine eggs that she lovingly painted. Her eggs were so beautiful that she was always won first prize at the Easter festival in Moscow. That's in Russia. Now, doesn't she look like a grandmother? That's why she's called Babushka, because she's a grandmother. Each day, Babushka would take the shell of an egg from her basket and paint it in wonderful designs, using the shapes of stars and flowers, triangles and circles. Through the long, cold winter, Babushka painted. Remember, they're a lot of work. Then one day, after a snowstorm, Babushka went outside. She could still hear the faint sound of falling snow. It was a sound like soft rain. Herds of caribou came to feed at Babushka's because the grasses they usually ate were covered with snow. "A miracle," she whispered as she fed some. "These wild things have found their way to me." Just then, a flock of noisy geese honked loudly overhead. As they glided over the snow, one of them faltered and fell from the sky. Babushka went to where the goose lay crumbled in the snow. "A hunter did this," Babushka grumbled. She carefully picked up the goose and took it back to her little house. There she fed the little goose some of her own from her own table and put the goose in her best basket, lined with the warmest quilt from her own bed. "I shall name you a good name, one that we both can like, eh, my little friend?" she said as she patted the goose's head. "How do you like Rechenka?" "Yes, Rechenka it shall be." With Babushka's care, Rechenka grew stronger as each day passed. To repay her kindness, Rechenka had laid an egg for breakfast every morning. As Rechenka got better, she waddled around the little house, exploring every nook, cupboard, and corner. One day, she jumped on top of Babushka's work table, overturning the jars of bright-colored paint that she used to color her eggs. "Nyet!" Babushka screamed as she chased the goose with a broom. "No!" The frightened goose flapped her wings to get away and knocked over the basket of eggs that Babushka had so lovingly painted. The eggs crashed onto the floor and shattered into millions of pieces. They were both very sad. There was no reason now for Babushka to go to the festival. Boy, that would make me sad. The next morning, Babushka slowly got out of bed and trundled over to Rechenka's basket to get her morning egg. But when she reached into the middle of the quilt, she picked out the most brilliantly colored egg that she'd ever seen. "A miracle!" Babushka whispered. "A miracle!" She made a small hole at both ends of the egg and blew the yolk and white into a dish to cook and eat later for breakfast. Then she held the egg up in the morning light and marveled at its beauty. After that, every morning for 12 mornings, there was another egg, each more beautiful than the one laid the day before. Soon Babushka had enough eggs to take to the festival in Moscow. How wonderful, she thought. A miracle has replaced the eggs that were broken. That's hard, blowing eggs out of the shell. "Spring is here, my little friend," Babushka said to Rechenka the morning of the festival. "Soon now you will be flying off to the north with your flock." She bustled to the hearth fire and brewed some of her most favored tea. The two shared a saucer of tea with kolach, a sweet Easter bread. She covered each piece with paska, a spread of cheese, butter, and raisins. They savored each bit together. "One for you, one for me," Babushka chanted. "Da, da, my little friend. I shall surely miss you, but you are a wild thing, and a miracle sent you to me. It would not be right to ask you to stay here with me forever." When Babushka left her little house, she took one last look at Rechenka sitting in the doorway. She waved, then took determined steps for Moscow with the basket of her most precious eggs. She crossed Liptov Valley, where the caribou mothers were walking their new calves. A miracle, she thought. New little lives. A miracle. She crossed the bridge over the Moskva River, and soon she could see the onion domes of old Moskva. These onion domes right here that look like onions, those are the tops of Orthodox churches, like I attended when I was younger. Here's some more. The festival was bright and exciting. There were goat carts selling kolach, processions, dancers, jugglers, and laughing children playing and running. Babushka showed her old friends the eggs. Her eggs are the most beautiful in all of Russia, they thought. "Look at them," the elders said. "They almost glow, as if the paint is part of the shell itself." The judges picked Babushka's eggs as the most beautiful. Babushka was so happy. She beamed as she looked at the first prize, a feather bed quilt. That's a great prize. As Babushka made her way homeward, a honking flock of geese flew overhead. Babushka gave them a long, lingering look. She wondered if Rechenka was one of them. What do you think? When Babushka arrived at her home that evening, Rechenka was gone. Alone, she put the new quilt on her bed. She brewed a cup of tea, ate the last of the kolach and paska, got into bed with her favorite book of poems, and drifted off to sleep. She hadn't noticed Rechenka's basket. You see it, don't you? But that night, Babushka was awakened from a sound sleep by an ever so small sound. It was coming from Rechenka's basket. She hobbled closer and saw a glorious egg, but this one was different from all the others. It quivered and it moved. It made tiny muffled sounds. The egg jumped, bumped, rolled, and pitched in the basket. You see what I see? Then there was a crack, and Babushka could see the very special gift that Rechenka had left for her. All a miracle, Babushka said, and this little goose remained with Babushka always. So this became her new pet. And do you suppose that this new goose would lay glorious eggs like Rechenka did? Well, we'll never know, will we, unless there is another book to go along with it. So remember, this book was all about Pysanky and the beautiful eggs that Babushka made for her festival. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this book as much as I enjoyed it, and I look forward to many more books to read.